Mute settings.
Yeah. Okay. Let's see. All right. I don't see it yet.
Let's
Okay,
see
it
what
says we're live. All right, we're live, guys. Okay, 3, 2, 1. Welcome to BatYard's Finest, bringing you the finest Batman and Superman and more in pop culture. I am your host, Josh from Metropolis, and we'll go in order.
I'm Jerry, your Green Lantern from Ola.
I'm Francisco, the boy from Indiana.
Oh, I'm getting a call from a million people. Sorry.
We're finally back with a regular episode tonight.
Yeah. Yeah,
we want to
back.
thank our Mr. Francisco for joining us, such short notice, especially right after the previous interview we did with him.
Yeah, thank you, Francisco, for coming on again from Blue Sentai Productions. Thank you again for coming on. This is a real treat.
No, thank you for inviting me back on. This will be an interesting night.
Oh yeah, this is going to be a lot of fun because now you get to hear all the contained chaos we've had just brewing over the last month.
Yeah, it's been a while since we did one of these episodes, Francisco. It's been like over a month because we have a third guest, third host usually, and he's been on hiatus, so we're kind of waiting for him. So that's why we're doing this kind of like
he's on sabbatical doing 50 years of hard labor.
Yeah, exactly. And sorry about the interruption in the beginning. I was getting a phone call, so I guess my phone is connected to my laptop right now. So this is the segment of the show where we discuss BSBS, which is BS, standing for Batman, Superman, and BSing around. So it's basically any film news, anything you've recently seen in theaters, anything you kind of want to bring up before we get into the main events, which are Showdown, Batman animated series, and Once Upon a Time in the West. So those are two big properties that we're going to be talking about, but this is just kind of a portion of the show where we just mess around and talk about like movie news and things that came up. So Francisco, do you have anything that pops in your head that you want to talk about, or
anything you'd like to share?
Well,
really,
I definitely hearing. It's funny, talking about superheroes and stuff. And Martin Scorsese, I guess, is still making waves on the internet after his last week comment about how people aren't going to know what movies are like in the future because of all these film franchises and stuff. And I kind of feel like he's just spilling gloom and doom talking about that because film franchises aren't new to Hollywood history. It's funny we're talking about a Western tonight because, that's a fine example of what people would have said back in the day. Oh, where are all the good movies? All we have are these Westerns. All we have are these horror movies. And, movies like Citizen Kane, were probably obscured in their time because there were other films, comedy franchises, stuff that obscured their popularity because people were gravitating towards that media at the time. And I think Marty's just getting a little too bent. He's getting old. And he's worried about his legacy, I think.
Yeah, I can definitely understand, him being worried about his legacy. I'm not saying people won't recognize movies in the future, but I think kind of at the essence is people in the future won't know what it was like shooting, on rod and reel as compared to, all digital now. Well, at least, that's my personal take for it. But, I do agree with what you said. A movie's always going to be a movie. It's just all in how you want to shoot it and present it. I think he's just an old man being an old man.
Yeah, no, I expect Martin Scorsese to, not like Marvel films and, talk about that. And I don't know. And with all this AI technology being integrated into film, I can understand his perspective on that. At the same time, I think the future of movie making is like, kind of bright in a way because all this technology is coming out. Like we're still technically in like early stages of like filmmaking. Like it's been 100 years. Like, yeah, that's a long time. But in the grand scope of humanity that's like just a slice
That's just
of
a grain of sand.
Yeah, exactly. So like I don't know. I'm kind of excited what's gonna come in the future. I just hope it's still man-made and or at least products that are made by humans or have some interaction with the movie making. Not just like AI products like just being shot out, which I could understand that perspective too, like the doom and gloom.
It's so funny that Francisco brought that up because some of the news I had to share is this. So this one that I have is from our tech guy. He told me about it, I think a night or two ago before. But the writer's strike is officially ending tomorrow as of Wednesday.
Oh,
So, all the things Josh was just saying about, the human element, AI, and, what's going to be the difference between man and machine. I guess, as far as what writers and actors are concerned, I guess somebody realized, we should probably get on board with this now before it gets to a point where, if you have a 10-second audio clip of somebody saying, how do you do? You can just AI generate every word in the dictionary for their voice for a production they had no knowledge of. And, obviously, since it's AI generated and it's their voice, they can't say, like, well, somebody's, copyright infringing on, something of mine and things of that weird nature.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah, you definitely have more insight on that than I do. I just heard it was like ending, but I didn't look into the nitty gritty of everything.
Because I know a big portion of what the writers and actors were wanting is protection, from all the AI generated stuff. Because we've seen, the president's AI generated content on it, the internet and places. And then a couple of, maybe, deceased celebrities, US presidents, just other famous people. And I'll say this, I did hear it about it, years and years ago, like, oh, it's never going to really go that far. But here we are 2023 and we have, Chat GPT, which, some college students are using as a form of a personal tutor for free. And, it's also has the capability to write episodes and movies for things. They did a whole episode on South Park using Chat GPT.
Right. Yeah, that was a good episode if you guys saw.
I've seen a little bit of it.
It was pretty funny.
But I'm definitely glad that the writers and actors are getting the protections they desperately need. Because, in malicious hands, it's as easy as saying, well, insert actor, just called our prime minister a racial slur, so now we're declaring war on your country.
Yeah, like a North Korea kind of instance with what's that movie? The Interview. That wasn't like an AI thing, but that was a whole debacle.
And then I guess the last bit of news I have is everybody that I know has seen, well, not everybody, but a few of the people I know and trust have seen the new Saw movie, Saw 10. They said it was a very well put together film, from the plot even to the, the death traps where, some you obviously have to die and others you can escape from. But
is it a prequel or is it
so how it fits in the timeline is between Saws 1 and 2.
Okay.
So the guy who saw it yesterday was telling me that, they were filling in more of the in between of movies with this now. So since obviously this was so well received, they might try to add in a couple of more into the story. Obviously we know how everything with Saw ends, but I would like to see, just a few other details kind of explained that I felt they just brushed past.
Gotcha. Okay. Oh, that's cool. So, Francisco, I wanted to ask you before we get into more nitty gritty of, the movies and stuff that like are going on right now in film news. Do you have any works that you want to announce or anything that you're working on currently at Blue Sentai Productions that you want to showcase or that you could reveal?
Any deals with the devil to bring back a Claymator?
Selling my soul for promotion. No, we're actually halfway in between a lot of projects, so it's kind of hard to really announce anything, so to speak, other than we have a remake of episode 1 that is available to be seen, which we're working on episode 2 and getting that finished. So if you all want to go find Blue Sentai Productions on YouTube, check out episode 1, leave comments, criticism, please. I encourage criticism, any kind of critique, because we're only going to make this series better if we know what the audience wants to see. Otherwise, I'm just going to keep yarning on with sci-fi tropes until I run out of steam.
That's cool. So are you going to use like new audio and everything, or are you going to use the same audio recording and just like new puppetry for?
Oh no, I mean it was totally, it's already done. It's remade entirely.
Wow, okay.
Yeah. You could still find the original one, which was uploaded, I believe, in June of last year.
Right.
And it's great animation. It has the story set up, but it was lacking in sci-fi. They're just, I was like, I need to have monsters. I need to have, a more alien lore. I said, well, let's just redo it, because my buddy wanted to make it more comedy centric, and I went along with it because I thought, well, no, it's kind of fun, It was kind of, our pitch was like, imagine the Ren and Stimpy episode Space Madness, but as a TV series.
That's, I like. Okay,
and so that was but now I'm like, let's just have dashes of that insanity, but let's keep it pretty well grounded and just being pure sci-fi, and maybe even amping up the horror aspects as well too. So taking a little bit more from stuff like Alien or classic Doctor Who, even classic Star Trek as well. But that was just my thing. It's like, because I don't know how many sci-fi comedies really, like, it's funny we talk about movies, and I think of one of the movies that people like now but just totally went under the radar was like Galaxy Quest. It's like that was a well-crafted
movie. Yeah,
I don't remember that movie.
Yeah, it was Tim Allen and Sigourney Weaver was in it. Alan, what's his name?
Alan Rickman.
Rickman, yes, yeah, he was in it too. I used to watch that as a kid a lot.
I missed that. That's so crazy.
It's basically like a Star Trek parody comedy, but like it's honestly pretty on par with Star Trek too. Like it's pretty good, in its own right.
Okay, I'm gonna have to check that out.
Yeah, it's
very much a love letter to Star Trek. It's not really making fun of it as much as you could tell these guys love the original show, and they wanted to just do their own thing with it. So, but that didn't really fare too well. I think it just kind of came and went in the box office, and it's like, I guess people have a hard time receiving sci-fi comedy because they assume it's going to be like Spaceballs. Either it's going to be raucously funny, or we just have like a very serious science fiction film. It's like, for a lot of people, one or the other. So something that's a little more winged. And especially because there's a lot of dry humor too, and I don't know if that sat well with audiences at the time. So almost felt like a very British film, actually, in its sense of humor. But I like British comedy, so
yeah, like what Monty Python, like comedy kind of sketches, kind of that.
Well, I know I don't have any more. Those were the only two things I wanted to touch on, especially the writer's strike of
that's a big one
tomorrow.
Yeah, I don't honestly. I feel like I should have BSBS, but like I said, it's been so long that like I kind of haven't been keeping up with it.
Yeah.
So I think we'll be better off for next episode for more BSBS that's coming out. Francisco, do you have anything you want to mention before we get into the short?
I don't think so.
Okay. All right, cool. So we are going to discuss Batman the Animated Series episode Showdown, originally released September 12th, 1995. So Jerry, if you could discuss Showdown and give us a little synopsis on what the episode is about.
I would be glad to. So we will be discussing Showdown from Batman the Animated Series, and it starts off with some Spider-Man wannabe thugs gassing a retirement home, and then they go in looking for one of the elderly citizens there to, I guess, in a lack of better knowledge at the time, kidnap them. And then as Batman and Robin make their way in to stop the attempted kidnapping, they see that one person is missing, and there is a mysterious tape left by Ra's al Ghul. As Batman and Robin listen to the tape, it is essentially the telling of Ra's al Ghul and how things were happening in the Wild West back in the day as the Continental Golden Spike was about to be driven into the last track of railroad. We are introduced to Jonah Hex, I believe, for the first time in this series.
Yeah, I think
And
the first and only time you see
the first and
Hex in the
only.
series.
And then from there, we learn that Jonah Hex is looking for a bounty of Arcade Duval, and he finds him working with Ra's al Ghul. But as things progress, we see that Ra's al Ghul and Arcade both have very different opinions on punishment, and time management. Ra's al Ghul is being, he's very lenient. He's not, very hard on them. But we see Arcade just cracking the whip and just insulting the workers and belittling them to a very extreme degree. And then Jonah Hex is captured by two of the hired workers and is brought to Arcade and Ra's al Ghul. There's a small interaction where Arcade wants to go ahead and finish killing Jonah Hex because he believes him to be a railroad spy, but Ra's al Ghul is saying, no, just lock him up. I have questions for him. And then we learn that Ra's al Ghul has a early version of a Zeppelin, and he's using it to destroy the Transcontinental Railroad so that America will name him the master of the country. And from there, we get a very, in my opinion, great action sequence from Jonah Hex fighting Arcade at the bottom of the ship. I have no aeroplane knowledge, so please forgive me. But then we learn that as Batman and Robin pull up, and they see Ra's al Ghul with the elderly man in the wheelchair, to learn that Arcade is his son, and what Ra's did as punishment to him for, essentially going against everything I had planned. He sentenced him to 50 years of hard labor, which is a sentence that's essentially death for an average person. But then we also learned that he has bathed in the Lazarus pit, and all Ra's wants to do is just take his son home and let him live out the last of his days as comfortably as possible.
Yeah, that was very well put. That's episode. So Francisco, before we dive into the episode, I just want to get your initial thoughts on, like, overall, what are your thoughts on Batman and the animated series? Like, have you seen it before? Are you familiar with this universe?
Well, other kids were watching Barney and Mr. Rogers, I was watching Batman the Animated Series.
Awesome.
So it was my childhood. I probably was too young to be appreciating it, but when it came out on DVD back in 2006-07, I started rewatching a lot of them, and I was like, wow, this is such an amazing show. And I think especially the world building that it did. Now, it didn't get quite as extended as it did with the later DC Super Friends reboot that was done right after, also made by Bruce Timm and Paul Dini, who worked on the series. But it would introduce the characters like Jonah Hex and then some other DC villains that weren't necessarily Batman-centric, but were from the DC universe as well. Like, we have Dr. Hugo Strange in one episode. A couple others, can't for some reason I can't remember them right now. But this was one where, here's a DC character that hadn't really had much exposure in TV or even film media at all at this point. And so I thought it was actually a really fun episode. But that was something I had told Josh, and what you were just talking about, Jerry, the Transcontinental Railroad getting blown up by an impossible machine sounds a lot like Wild Wild West to me, because I feel like they ripped off this episode. I think this was 95 or 96?
I think it was 96.
It says 95 on the IMDb page, but I don't know. Who knows how accurate that is, but it says 95.
Okay. So Wild Wild West was probably just in development at that time. I think that they said actually Richard. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, no, go ahead. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Oh, I was just going to say really quick that Richard Donner was slated to direct Wild Wild West.
Oh,
and
really?
Mel Gibson,
that would have been amazing. Okay.
Mel Gibson would have been James West.
That would have
been
a good movie if that was the case.
To me, it was just the long and short of that story was he also had the option to do Maverick, and he wanted to do Maverick instead because he thought it would be fun to bring back James Garner because him and Mel Gibson kind of look related, and so they wanted to do that movie with the whole play with the reveal that they look like these opposing individuals, but they were actually father and son in the story, and they were both after the money, and so. He wanted to do that instead of Wild Wild West, so then it fell into the hands of the infamous John Peters from Superman Lives.
That's what I was going to mention. John Peters is a producer of, the canceled Superman Lives and the Batman series, Batman 89 and Batman Returns. And then I guess the Joel Schumacher Batman's, correct?
I think so.
That's true.
Yeah, so... I was going to mention that. So, maybe with the Batman connection, he kind of peeked over Bruce Timm's shoulders, like, "Oh, good idea." Took that.
I like to think that he was sitting on a couch in his sweatpants with a bowl of ice cream, and he was just channel flipping and saw that. It was like, "Ooh, we'll just replace the Zeppelin with a giant spider."
Yeah. Well, Superman Lives. To kind of tie the whole Wild Wild West point, Superman Lives, there was originally going to be a giant spider in that movie, and that movie wasn't made. John Peters, the producer, really was pushing for that giant spider fight against Superman, and then he eventually produced Wild Wild West a couple of years where Superman Lives was going to basically be released, and so instead of he worked on Wild Wild West. And the giant spider is the ultimate villain or the big thing at the end of Wild Wild West. But honestly, I never seen Wild Wild West. I seen clips of it and it looks terrible. So I just never decided to watch it.
I could put on my best nostalgic goggles and it doesn't sit well.
Yeah, that's why I'm I think I'm good. I like the backstory more of Wild Wild West than I think I would like the movie. All that the nuances with the giant spider and everything.
That's funny.
Funny enough, not to get too much on this topic, but that was still not what drove that film's cost up. I think it was a major flop. But what actually drove up that film's cost were the trains. The trains in that movie drove up the movie's costs because one of the trains actually was an engine on static display in the Baltimore and Ohio Museum in Maryland. They brought it back to life, lock, stock, and barrel, and then shipped it all the way out to Idaho to film it there.
Sense. Wow, okay.
And then, to top that off, there was a locomotive down in Tucson, Arizona, that called the Reno. It had been in a lot of old Western movies, most notably recently Tombstone. It's the train that you see when Kurt Russell's shooting at a Clampett and stuff when the train's leaving. That's the train. It caught on fire, and then they actually restored it for Wild Wild West so that it could play one of the ceremonial trains at the the Golden Spike ceremony. But it's like that's what drove up the price, and yet that's like probably 20% of the movie.
Yeah, that's. I mean, it's probably its best contribution was bringing that train back to life because the movie looks, subpar.
Oh, it's back in the museum.
This belongs in a museum.
It ain't moving anymore. That engine's over 160 years old. It ain't moving.
Yeah. So I wanted to get back to your point about Jonah Hex. Like, he never really been showcased in any feature, like cartoon really. And I know he had that terrible Jonah Hex movie, which starred Josh Brolin and Megan Fox, which I haven't seen.
I've seen it. It's
it's bad.
It is like it has enjoyable moments, but it's overall you're just like, I've seen it once. That's all I need.
Right?
Because I think I watched it.
It might be a notch better than Wild Wild West.
Okay, I honestly do own it because my cousin Tony, who's supposed to be on the show, but he's not right now. But he actually gave me that DVD. He's like, I'm trying to get rid of this. You can have it. And I'm like, okay. So I have the Blu-ray. I haven't watched it. It's just been sitting on my shelf. So
watch it this weekend, and then we'll reconvene next episode.
Okay. All right. I'll do it. That'll be a good BS topic. Okay. That's fair. Yeah, so honestly, this has to be the best Jonah Hex movie ever made. It's a Batman cartoon.
Yeah, Jonah Hex was everything I wanted him to be. He was, he was calm and cool when he had to be. He was what you wanted for a cowboy. And when he was ready to, deliver some vigilante style justice, he told Arcaday, like, this isn't about the money. This is about justice. But obviously he probably did still take the money and give it to somebody who might be in need, as was kind of the more sweetened version of a cowboy. But I
think he was just sweetened up, period, though. I think the comics, they're definitely rated R, as far as what they were coming out.
I never read the source material. Like, this is like really my only knowledge of Jonah Hex was this, and like a Brave and the Bold episode, which is drastically different from this Jonah Hex. So I'm not really sure about.
I've read a few of his comics. I do enjoy them. I think they're good. I just haven't, made time to go back and reread after years.
When was he like made, like created?
It's
his heyday.
I would have to look that up because I know he's
late 80s.
I want to say 80s, maybe 70s.
Okay, I could see like 70s, 80s.
It was kind of like in the fallout of the Dark Knight Returns that they wanted to kind of have someone almost equally as dark, but also kind of have it. I think they were just originally, long before Gotham by Gaslight ever came out, they were musing the idea of doing superheroes in the Victorian age, as they called it. But then also too, I think it funny we're talking about Once Upon a Time in the West, because I think there was sort of a drive to want to adapt that kind of spaghetti western style, brutal, violent, and put it into comics. And then also have someone that's just sort of like, it's funny you said cowboy, because I think he's very much just a straight up, with lack of a better phrase, ex-Confederate terrorist, as far as how the comics portrayed him. But someone who is going to fight on the right side of justice, not the law, but justice.
I do like how, like, he's hard around the edges, but in this, like, he has a heart of gold kind of thing. Like, he kind of turns around in the end. He doesn't, kill Ra's al Ghul's offspring. He decides to, take him 12 counties, away on horseback, because he just doesn't want to waste his time hauling a stinking carcass, like, across all these state lines. So I understand that. Maybe he kills him right when he gets to the police station. Who knows?
Jonah Hex also debuted 1985. That was
okay.
So he was like
close.
Prime 80s.
Yeah, no, definitely. You were on the money.
That's funny though. I think the Jonah Hex of those comics probably would have ignited the hydrogen on that Zeppelin and would have left Arcady to incinerate to death. Probably.
Yeah. Jonah Hex, if this was accurately depicted as the Wild West, he's definitely the Desperado style. He'll kill you to prove a point, and he has no problem killing you. Because I think I only read about maybe 3 or 4 of the comics that my aunt had given me as a kid, but I was like, man, this is something, you know?
Yes, I agree. Sorry.
I mean, all the comics at that time, and not to mention, not long after that, then we had stuff like Spawn coming out. Getting a lot grittier but realistic as far as some of the social and other issues that were being brought up, sort of things that other comic series would just. Well, I mean, obviously Spider-Man and Marvel, were kind of ahead in the game in that area, but DC was really starting to surprise people, along with Dark Horse too, with the kind of content they were producing. So, yeah. Obviously with Batman, the animated series, they just had to try and make this unique tie-in of how Batman and Hex are very similar, and why Ra's, told him the story to say, spare me as he spared my son, do the right thing, at least, for the sake of some serenity between family.
And it's so funny you said that, because Jonah Hex, having nothing at all but, just his wits, a 6-shooter pistol, and, above average, like detectiving skill for what would be considered back in the West, he did so much to just stumble upon Ra's al Ghul. Like, obviously he would have got Arcaday, but he just coincidentally he's also tied in with this other guy, but I'm not focused on him yet. I'm just here for this dude, and I want to save the Transcontinental Railroad from being, destroyed.
Yeah, it kind of is a happenstance. He is an accidental hero almost. He just ends up stopping Ra's al Ghul from, destroying the railroads. But
there was a great scene. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, it's a happenstance, he was just going for his bounty, and then he ends up basically saving
the world.
Yeah.
But what cracked me up though was the way they shot one scene where the airship is just pummeling cannon fodder on the town and the railroad, and then Hex goes in and he throws a cannonball into the ammunition magazine, which blows up the airship, and it cuts to a scene of a cavalry officer looking at his gun in astonishment, thinking, "Oh, did he fire the magic bullet that got the airship?"
Yeah, that was pretty funny.
Which fired the son of the gun.
I don't know if you actually could have brought a Zeppelin down with a bullet. I think it'd have to be an explosive round.
Yeah,
I think that's what they did in World War One.
I did appreciate it, and it was only a couple seconds for this little joke to happen, and I noticed in this, I don't know, in this episode, I feel I have to watch other Batman animated series episodes to really compare, but the animation was very fluid. Everyone was kind of moving around, even the background characters were really reacting to
there was no dead space,
the blimp blowing up, and yeah, a lot of people, they're Batman moving his cape and how they're fighting in the beginning. It was very fluid. Wait, what was that, Jerry?
Oh, no, I was agreeing with you. I was saying there was definitely no dead space at all during this episode, because like you said, it was even if it was something minor, something was just always going on. Somebody was walking, they were moving around, they were having some kind of interaction, and nothing was just static.
Yeah, really. They didn't waste any time at all. From the moment you see Jonah Hex, you know exactly what he's about. He's a sharpshooter. He'll shoot a fly, in between its wings. It doesn't matter how small or large the target is. He could shoot it, and you believe him. From the very beginning, you just know what the character is about from the very, couple seconds that he's on screen for that moment.
30.
Yeah. And I do like how it encapsulates the Jonah Hex character, and it is Batman the animated series, but he kind of caps off the beginning of the story and the end of the story, and then it like kind of all ties together. There's not really too many episodes where it's like Batman is not really the main character of the episode. He's always like the central part of it. I could only think of a few, maybe like there's like a Batgirl episode. It's kind of like her point of view.
Isn't there a Robin episode?
Yeah, there is a Robin episode too. So like, it's usually still like tied into the Bat family at the very least, but like it was never like, here we're gonna do an episode about Aquaman for for Batman the animated series. Like they never done that like after that. So I really commend it.
The villains mostly.
Right.
Like a villain can get an episode, but not another hero.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Where it's like a completely different world, and all the tie-in is Ra's al Ghul. So like there's still like that tie-in that connects it to the rest of the Batman universe. But honestly, like if this like on its own, like it works like as just like a Jonah Hex show, which is pretty astounding. It's pretty great.
I would love to see Bruce Timm do a Jonah Hex show.
Yeah.
Especially with the style of Batman the animated series. Because I think Jonah Hex would fit. It would be a perfect transition right into that same, just LA noir, just gritty and dark undertones.
I'm all for that.
And it made me miss this animation too, like watching it. I was like, oh, man, I wish they kind of like stayed on this path of this.
They don't want to though.
Yeah, it was extremely hard to animate. Like I understand why they
cell animation, yeah,
and
all hand painted backgrounds on black canvas and everything. It's like
it's beautiful.
Yeah, I know.
It's a lost art now.
Mm-hmm.
Well, even at their time, they were just, old was new again. They went back to the Max Fleischer cartoons and said, that's our template. That's how we're going to do these cartoons. And, I think there was kind of a revival. Animaniacs, too, was kind of like reviving the Looney Tunes look. And and so they were all trying to...
And I know Bruce Timm and Paul Dini worked on that. I think that's kind of like where they started. At least,
and Tiny Toons as well.
Yeah, it was Tiny Toons. Yeah, and then they went off to do Batman and animated series. And it's funny you mentioned the Max Fleischer Superman because I know they were planning on doing they were like going to make the Superman series, Superman animated series in that style. They had like art, concept art of like each character, like the main characters, and then Bruce Timm's like, well, this is just going to be a worse looking Max Fleischer Superman show. So I guess that's kind of why they like streamline the animation and like the character design. And plus, I'm sure it helped with the cost of like animation and like the time it would take. So that was like one of the main reasons why, because he just thought it would be a worse looking Max Fleischer Superman show. Which I kind of I wish at least like one episode of it existed just to see like what it would look like,
like what it could be as a potential.
Yeah, exactly. So, do you guys want to get into final thoughts of Batman animated series episode Showdown? We'll start with Jerry.
I definitely, like I said before, I love Batman the animated series. I have a lot of nostalgia and just really fond and positive memories growing up with it. But now, watching it as an adult, and I have, I'm not going to say more, but I have a touch more comic book knowledge and appreciation of things. This episode in particular, it, like we all said, it showcased Jonah Hex in the best Jonah Hex way. And for me, I'm going to give this episode a 9 out of 10. It's not that I don't think it deserves that perfect 10, but it left me wanting more Jonah Hex. At least one more episode.
I can understand that. Yeah. Francisco?
I definitely agree with Jerry's, assessment. But I think for me, as a a fan of classic science fiction, Jules Verne, I really appreciate the whole Zeppelin thing and the almost what you might call steampunk kind of vibe that this episode gave. You know, it was Old West, but it was definitely hearkening to that Jules Verne kind of world. And it's actually the Zeppelin is an allusion to a Jules Verne story that I believe is called Rober the Conqueror. And it's about a guy that goes around in a flying ship with propellers that starts bombing a railroad and stuff. Or maybe it was warships, I forget. They called it 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, but in the sky. And actually, there's a movie called Master of the World starring Vincent Price. It's watchable because of him.
Yeah.
Funny enough, linking with our next movie, young Charles Bronson's in the movie. And it's hokey and goofy.
Huh.
But
how old is he in the movie?
This probably mid to late 20s.
Okay.
Nice. That's decent.
But long story short, to me, it's like I enjoyed that aspect because Batman the Animated Series sort of is steeped in that retro future kind of world. And this just kind of further, enhanced that with this idea of like I said, an impossible aircraft that could. There's no way no one would have built something like that in 1869.
Well, and plus, like the police blimps, like in regular Gotham City from day to day, that's kind of where technology went to, was police blimps, in the Batman universe. So I like that connection. It seems like there is a streamline to it. Do you want to give it a rating for this episode?
Well, yeah, based on like what Jerry had said too, what I agree with, I would actually amplify those thoughts to give it a 10 out of 10 for me, because to have Jonah Hex in an episode, even watered down, is a treat.
Yes, it is. And I also love how you called it a early version of steampunk, because rewatching this now, I was thinking it, but I'm like, this reminds me of something I see all the time, but I don't know why.
Well, at the end of the day, it is just like that Jules Verne, H.G. Wells kind of sci-fi. I mean, it doesn't have a name, but, I guess people would call it classic sci-fi or vintage sci-fi.
Right. Something of that nature.
Yeah, no, I agree with both of you guys. I really enjoyed this episode. It made me wish like there was like a part 2 episode of Jonah Hex, but honestly, at the same time, it kind of like, it being one episode, like a one-off, kind of gives it a little bit more mystery to the character of Jonah Hex. It's like, what happened to him? Like he like really, put one on Ra's al Ghul. Like at this moment, I'm sure he had like more adventures. And yeah, I honestly, it makes me want to read the comic books of Jonah Hex, and I love his like his concept, like with his eye, and like the skin over his face. I feel like they're very true to the character design in the comics, like in the Batman universe, Batman animated series, like universe. Yeah, I give this episode a 10. I really enjoy it.
I'm the odd duck out tonight.
That's all right. I understand. It's not like you gave it a bad rating. So okay, so we're gonna add Tony to the show. Tony, give me a thumbs up if you're ready. Okay, perfect. Cousin Tony's coming in 3, 2, 1. There he is. There's Cousin Tony.
You got Tony. Tony, you got a beard now.
I do. I'm honestly, I'm gonna say I'm kind of surprised my computer didn't blow up as soon as I got added to the.
Oh, that's okay. That's the whole point of the show,
Tony, quick side note. Have you played Mortal Kombat 1 yet, Tony?
I haven't. I kind of want to. I've played Street Fighter 6, but I haven't played Mortal Kombat.
That was going to be my next one, because I just watched somebody do the story mode for Mortal Kombat 1. Tony, it's perfect.
That's good. That's good. I want to.
I just had to get that out of the pleasantries out of the way.
No, that's fair. Oh, Tony, this is Francisco. Francisco, this is Tony. Francisco is an awesome claymation animator. You should check his stuff out. Blue Sky Productions.
Absolutely.
So, just wanted to, send out the pleasantries, and we're gonna move on to the main event, which is Once Upon a Time in the West. So honestly, I don't know who to give this to. I could be nice and not give it to Tony, but at the same time, I want to throw it at Tony because he just joined us. Francisco, do you want to do a quick synopsis of Once Upon a Time in the West, and let Tony breathe a little bit?
Well, I mean, it's a little bit hard to really explain at length, but I guess the really brief story about it is basically an ensemble of people, all centered around an incident where a family is massacred in the right after the initial beginning, where we're introduced to our main character, Harmonica, who is played by Charles Bronson. And right after this family is massacred, there's starting to become implications of who killed. Well, we know who killed the family. It was a guy named Frank, played by none other than Henry Fonda, with his gleaming blue eyes staring down a little boy as he aims a gun right in his face.
Holy crap, that's Henry Fonda.
Looking at the little boy like this.
Right. Yeah.
Just like, bam.
Yeah, that's a reaction Sergio Leone wanted the audience to have, is like, oh my gosh, it's Henry Fonda. Like, how could he do such a horrific thing? Which is, I do like that backstory to it. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I just
that was the guy you wanted your daughter to bring home from a date back in the day.
Yeah, with those dreamy blue eyes. I mean, and then he's doing those horrific acts. He killed the little kid. He even killed the little boy.
But in brief, though, the massacre ends up tying a whole group of people together, all while a railroad is being constructed. And funny, Jerry, we were just talking about the Transcontinental Railroad, and here we have sort of a mythical version of the Transcontinental Railroad in this story, where there's a ruthless robber baron who wants the land that has now happened, the land that the family had massacred. The heir claimant is none other than the husband's mistress, soon-to-be wife, or, oh no, they already were married, as we find out in the film, that she is the heir of the land, and now it becomes a race to who's going to help her, who's going to defeat her, all culminating in a rather epic ending where, well, I don't want to spoil it for those who haven't seen, but that's pretty much the long and short of it.
Yeah, no, that definitely sums it up. Thank you, Francisco, for doing that.
I love how short you made it, Francisco, because I would have been talking for like another 5 minutes.
Yeah, you could really go into detail with each individual scene, and that's the whole point of the discussion.
The opening scene alone, I could go into 10 minutes just talking about every nuance that happens at the train station.
Yeah, just the beginning 10 minutes. Like, you could just like talk about that forever.
You could cut it with a knife, and there still be so much left.
Yes, this movie is just oozing like atmosphere and like symbolism. And there's a lot going on. The music is fantastic. I always forget how to pronounce his name.
Morricone.
Morricone, yes. I wanted to mention the music because the music is honestly one of my favorite aspects of the movie.
Yes.
Like, it's just the Once Upon a Time, like the main theme when the music is swelling, and then that camera is like one shot. It goes with Jill, the character, while she's coming out of the train station, coming off, and like there's no one to pick her up. She's like, oh, where's my family? And the camera shot like swells up, and it goes with the music, like as it crescends up, like, and shows the whole town, and like a big portion of the budget was spent just making that town. And it's beautiful. And like, I guess the music was written before the filming of the movie. So like the timing of the shot and the music was like, like perfect, because like they knew exactly how long like that would be elevated. And I got to say, Back to the Future Part 3, like, just steals that shot, like in the beginning of like Hill Valley, showing like the town. Like, obviously it's like paying homage, and it's such a fantastic shot. Like, why not steal from the greats, But I just wanted to mention that. And I do have the vinyl soundtrack to this movie.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, I listen to it all the time. I listen to it like while I'm cleaning. Sometimes I listen to it at the gym. I don't bring vinyl with me to the gym, but like it's like, especially the harmonica theme and Frank, it's so sinister and it's just like, that build up, and this movie is just like screams suspense. It's like a masterful craft of like making suspense, like the beginning 10 minutes with the train sequence
and you never know who's gonna get involved.
Yeah, it's beautiful. I could keep talking forever. Tony, you haven't said anything. What do you think?
I didn't really know what to expect going into this movie because I kind of didn't realize it was a Sergio Leone movie. I'm not very familiar with Western movies at all. I've literally seen one in my life. I've seen.
What was it? Back to the Future 3?
Yeah, Back to the Future 3. I saw Wild Wild West with Will Smith.
Oh, that doesn't even count.
No, I'm joking. I saw The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, and I loved that movie.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it's still Leone.
So yeah, like doing the research into like what went into this movie and like the casting and knowing that it's created by the same person and the filming and all that was very interesting. I don't know if I like this quite as much as The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. I think that for some reason that swept me away, but I did very much enjoy it.
That. I think it's like really your taste. Like honestly, I think this is. I don't know. I don't know what I like more. I feel like I've seen this more recently. Like I've seen it more times than The Good and Bad and the Ugly, I could say. But like it's definitely made me want to go back to The Good and Bad and the Ugly and the Ugly. Fistful of Dollars and like
I haven't seen those either. I know that's a trilogy. I didn't know this was a trilogy. I guess this is also a trilogy.
Wait, this is a trilogy?
I thought it was.
Very disconnected though.
Yeah,
because there are no recurring characters or anything. Just the director and the film composer.
Right.
So everything else is all separate, and one is in Mexico. So it's kind of a weird trilogy, actually.
Yeah, this is like the only one I could recall that's shot in the United States in Arizona. Like most of this stuff's shot in Spain or like
really?
Italy. And I think this is like half and half. Like half of it's shot in Spain, and then the other half is shot in Arizona. Is that correct?
Oh, that's funny.
Maybe like 30%.
Right.
I know Monument Valley.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you're probably right, but I think most of it was shot in Spain. But this movie like blew me away the first time I watched it. I honestly, the reason I watched it, there's a YouTuber named Ralph the Movie Maker. He was like talking about like movies that like he was recommending, and like this was one of them. I was like, oh, I gotta watch this. And then like after I watched it, I'm like, oh, I bought the Blu-ray. I got the soundtrack. It was fantastic. So I just a shameful plug, I guess, for Ralph. But I wanted to mention that was like I've seen the Clint Eastwood trilogy prior, but I never seen this movie, and I think originally he wanted Clint Eastwood to be one of the three men to be shot like in the beginning, which. I'm kind of glad he didn't because, like, it kind of would have taken away from that character too. But I would understand the tie-in. Like, it would have been cool at the same time. So I don't know how you guys would have felt if Clint Eastwood.
That would be kind of funny if he's just.
I think he was actually pegged for Jason Robards' character, actually. Okay. And he wasn't available.
I see.
And I think he got because Sergio Leone, as a director, did not speak English. He only would just say, "Watch me," and Clint kind of got tired of that, I think.
Yeah, I could understand. And squinting all the time because he had no sunglasses. That shit on is just hitting his face. Like that's not like his character. Like I guess it works for his character, but that's like him. He's actually squinting because he can't see because the sun is like right in his face. There wasn't sunglasses.
Speaking
I want to say though, Tony, you. Oh, go ahead, Jerry.
Oh no, you can go. I was just gonna talk about one of the scenes I really enjoyed, kind of in the still beginning of the movie.
Oh, I'll go right ahead.
Oh, I'll just make it quick. Josh, when you mentioned the sunlight in people's faces. I was, as they did that wide shot, in Arizona, and they're just coming down, that dirt road, and you can see, the range in the back. There's not a cloud in the sky, and the sun is just beaming. That, like, from that moment all the way till they got to her new home, like all of that, like from the wide shot all the way to the slow zoom in, back to the slow zoom out. I loved every moment because it just showcased, every bit of natural detail they would have saw in the West at that time. And also, that's just a great idea to do. So that way, you don't have people just sitting in that hot Arizona heat, just baking and dying.
Yeah, no, exactly. It really takes its time, which a lot of people would say, "Oh, I don't like that." But this movie does it in such a beautiful way. Like you're really marinated in how these characters are feeling and the scenery, and you're really getting the whole aspect of everything.
Mm-hmm.
So, Francisco, what were you going to mention earlier?
Oh, well, I was just going to say, Tony, you were the right audience member for this sort of movie because, this is not really a movie for Western fans, for people who like good old-fashioned Westerns. This subverts so many of the cliches, the things that we've come to know about the Wild West, because from their inception in silent films, Westerns were always going to be entertainment. And they were not history lessons. They were not, there to tell you what actually happened. And, I think for Sergio Leone, he just very subtly just wanted to keep dispelling each of those myths as he's working through his films. Like with the first film was just kind of like pure fun, but for a few dollars more, it's more about the bounty hunter myth, the good, the bad, the ugly, the Civil War myth. And now we're talking about the myth of civilizing the West, which is a hard topic to talk about in movies because, there were films like John Ford's The Iron Horse, Cecil B. DeMille's Union Pacific that glorify this moment in history in an almost kind of way where it's like, okay, we get it. Yeah, we did the right thing. We killed the Indians. All right. Yeah, hooray. And this is the first film that really says, no, it was nasty. It was ugly. And there was nothing pretty about what happened, in this moment in history. But we're still going to tell you a good story on top of it. And I think that for that reason, it's good for people who just want to go hard, just go dive into this film, just not thinking about it as a Western and more as just a straight drama, really.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, no, definitely agree. This is more you can follow it as less. I remember Good and the Bad and the Ugly. I don't really know the history of the U.S. at that time, and I just remember kind of suddenly being in the middle of the war, and I was like, I don't really know what's happening, but I'm enjoying it. Don't really need that much as much here.
Yeah, it wasn't. It was all fictional. I don't even think. I think there was one battle in New Mexico, and I think it was 12 guys against 5 guys.
I
don't think that there were no.
Yeah, I do he kind of has that satirical edge to American history. When Americans kind of tell American history, it's easy to kind of glorify it, but he has that. He's from Italy, so he kind of can see it at a different lens than someone who's so bombarded with all these Western movies from the 50s. Oh, this is the classic American hero, we were so great when we weren't. Like you're saying, it was a disgusting, disturbing time. I'm
Very
sure it'll be
cutthroat.
fun for a day to be a cowboy, and then you're like, oh, this really fucking sucks, to say, to have that fantasy, to say, oh yeah, I want to be a cowboy for whatever, a day or something, but it would automatically, it would just not be a pleasant experience. And with the characters too, everyone's rough and gruff, and you know, even Harmonica, you don't know if he's like really a good guy or a bad guy, you know, especially when he's like interacting with Jill for the first time. She shoots him in the arm, or like he has like a scar on his face, and he's like pursuing her, and like he like, you know, rips her garments. So you're like, oh man, no, you know, is he a bad guy as well? You know, who am I supposed to root for? But I'm not sure why he ripped her garments. I think he was just, you know, just getting a razz out of her because she shot him. And then like it shows, you know, he did like protect her in the end from Frank's men, and like Cheyenne's like, oh, he can shoot too, you know. And I love the line delivery, and it's so quotable, you know, the quotes or the lines are so great.
I just want to touch on what.
Well, remember with the ripping of the garment off. Oh, sorry.
Oh,
but he was making a scene. Sorry, I just wanted to add really quick. Remember, he was trying to make her look like she had been roughed up. So when she went out to, remember, he said, "Go get some water," and so she goes out to get the water, and then that's when Frank's men are, you know, spying and stuff, and it was to create sort of a scene, you know, because she also was a prostitute.
Right.
So kind of creates sort of like this veneer that she was like in business or something, you know, and so that's the way I interpreted it. But I thought from when I was like, geez, Charles Bronson's playing a character I don't think I like for a moment there. I was like,
yeah, especially the first time you see it, I could see, you know, that mentality. Like, oh man.
Yeah.
Yeah, see, you're talking about growing up with Henry Fonda as a hero. I grew up with Charles Bronson as a hero in Death Wish, and it's like, and here he was being.
That's cool.
Yeah, and I just wanted
like,
to,
you know.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No. I interrupted you already.
I was just gonna add into what, you know, Francisco had mentioned earlier. This movie shows what the West really was about. Everybody was looking out for themselves, and they were after the most valuable resource back in the day that the West still struggles with, and that is water. The one thing we know about the West, it's hot, they have earthquakes, and they go through some really bad flash fires. Especially, you know, more recently. I don't know how it might have been back then with all the, you know, all the boom towns, and essentially you make your money, and then at the first sign of trouble, you know, you leave. But definitely everybody was like, okay, this is the only spot in town that has water. Whoever owns this spot of land is basically set for the rest of their life.
But also because of these.
Oh, that's cool.
They need water.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Charles Bronson says, he says, them tea kettles need water. Because that would have been, as he's building his railroad, he needed a spot out west where there'd be a reservoir to fill up the water tanks on the tender. And that probably was happened more times than few. Oftentimes, though, they would create the incidents like a Native Americans had attacked when it was really the henchmen. And then that would kind of justify the seizure of the land. Oh, what's the settlement doing here? Oh, those poor people, they were massacred by Redskins. You know, oh, it was a horrible ordeal. And so then that was how they could go ahead and then claim the land for themselves and then get what they wanted out of it. Because where the train stops for water, someone's going to stop and say, wait, there's water here too. And then before you know it, a shop set up, a little depot and everything. And that's how you get Phoenix, Arizona.
Right.
Yep. That's it. Exactly.
The town's also called Flagstone as a little reference to Flagstaff, which isn't in the desert though. But you know, it's kind of an interesting connection.
Yeah, that is a good point. I want to just like go back to the beginning of the movie, just like the very opening scene. I love the framing of everything. You know, like every shot is like framed with their hat, and it's like, you know, closed, like just their face and like the top of the brim of the hat, and that's like most of the he really gets into the close-ups, and like one character is bringing their hat down, and like the text is coming down on the brim of the hat, and like the train eventually comes in, and like, you know, it shows Sergio Leone's name like right underneath. Like I love how it's like all incorporated with you know, the intro. And I guess like he was kind of making fun of the movie High Noon, which it's on my list. I haven't seen it yet, but I guess like in the opening of that movie, the train arrives right on time, and then they have a shootout. And in this, like the train is like 2 hours late, and then all all of Frank's men are just sitting around like bored out of their minds, like building up the tension. And then like once the action actually happens, it's like only for a couple moments, like for a couple minutes, and like it's all that build up for like just a quick draw, and like that's how a shootout would be. It would just be guns blazing, and the time for a gun to fire is very, very short timing. And the lines of that moment with Charles Bronson, he's like, you bring a horse for me? looks like we're shy one horse. And then like the music blows, and oh, you brought too many. And it's just like, I just love that line delivery. And it's such a badass way to enter a movie. And then like he does get wounded. One of them does shoot him. So it's not like, these men are completely incompetent. It does show like, Frank's men are still dangerous people. And like, if they can shoot that well, like we'll see how Frank, how much better he is.
Yeah. And that was something I thought was really unique. They weren't afraid to show everybody getting hurt and roughed up. Usually, you have your main actor who's going to get the brunt of it, or, he's going to do more of the inflicting of, the gunshots, all the punches and throws and things. Everybody got their fair share of it. Mm-hmm. Like, even all the way down to, some of the side people who were just the goons. Because that's like the one scene when they have Harmonica, tied up. He's on the freight car, and then Cheyenne is, he's doing different things to kind of distract all the people in there so he can get off his clean shots. And one of my favorite ones was when he put his gun in his boot.
Oh yeah,
kind of waited for that dude to get lined up and shot, and then blow, he just popped him right in the head. And I'm just like,
great.
Obviously that is critically high level thinking back then, because obviously, he managed to get away unwounded that first round, but he freed I'm not going to call him a friend, more of a kindred soul, because they were just, fly by night acquaintances. Like, okay, thanks for helping me. I'll, see you when I'm dead.
Yeah,
of course, remember, I think it was off screen. Oh,
no,
I was just going to say that I think Cheyenne got it. What was it? He said we didn't get to see his wound. It was off screen when he tells Charles Bronson's character, he's like, that stupid Mr. Choo Choo.
I love that.
The gun.
I love that.
Yeah, that was great, Mr. Choo Choo. Like how he delivers it. It's so good.
That best part.
Yeah,
that
Morton,
for me is a 10 out of 10.
Yeah, even the character Morton, like he's such a frail man, and he has all this immense power, and like he takes out like a wad of cash, and Frank is like ready to shoot him, and he's like, the one thing that can stop that is this, and just like showing like the greed of man, like it's like the all powerful thing. And I honestly, I kind of feel bad. Honestly, I do feel kind of bad for him, but like, at the same time, he's like a hungry Morgul, he just like wants everything selfishly for himself. And like, I guess he didn't want the McBains to be killed, so like Frank kind of just did that in the beginning, like just in his own way. He's like, oh, people do, the people do listen to you like when there's like killing involved or something along those lines. And yeah, Morton's such a powerful character, and he's like literally like just a frail man. Like even Frank says he's out of the train, wants to have a conversation with Jill and just like make a deal for the land. Frank's just like, well, if you're out of that train, you just look like a turtle out of its shell, and he just knocks him down. And his whole dream is to see the Pacific Ocean from his window of the train, and he just has that painting. And it took me a few watches to really kind of grasp what his motive was, like his like dream of like what the significance of the painting was. So like in his last final moments, he just kind of like realizes that dream will never be fulfilled. He'll never see the Pacific from that window. And like that's like I feel like when he's staring at the painting, that's when he's getting that realization. And then like when he dies, you know, you hear the waves and everything. And I don't know, it's like powerful, like how like that's all connected. I thought that was pretty cool, like how it all ties in.
That's actually an interesting allusion to the real CEO of the Union Pacific Railroad. Now, he wasn't killed, but he ended up going to jail for major fraud that he pulled on the U.S. government. And he had a similar pathos where he was like all about, you know, we're going to unite the nation and I'm going to be the one to finally lay foot in San Francisco, you know, on behalf of Washington. So that was an interesting historical allusion, you know, with Leone just being a filmmaker, not a historian, that he would pick up on that, you know. And the idea of him being frail, I think, is more of an expression of his moral corruption, that he's become so stricken because he's allowed his greed to dictate his motives rather than thinking of, I mean, I don't know, when it comes to railroad building, it's like you could think that there's a greater good cause, but I think everyone building railroads in those days was just all about the land and getting everybody to be your tenant so you can charge them high rent rates and all that stuff. I mean, it was a pretty grotesque venture.
Yeah.
So, I was like, no, that's a great allusion to that, to him. Because I could see the man's name, the real life template, Thomas Durant. Actually, there's a TV show from AMC, Hell on Wheels. Fictional, but gets the character Thomas Durant right. And you could kind of see the connection then with Morton, where Durant plays sort of an anti-hero more in the show. And it kind of shows just how insane he was in his dream and what he was going to do to get what he wanted. Because, I mean, he stripped people of their pay. He purposely put us at war with the Cheyenne just so he could squiggle his railroad line so he could get $100,000 per track mile of track laid. I mean, he was just unscrupulously bad. I'm surprised they haven't made a movie about him, actually, because that would be an interesting movie. Because, go ahead.
I was gonna say, you know, that sounds like something that'd be a good claymation movie to see.
You know how hard it is to animate trains?
Well, you got the model chain. Just use that. You know.
No, actually, this one, the pistons don't move unless it's under power. So I can't move them manually. And so I would have to run it with the controller and just have it like inch, and it might just move too quick.
Yeah.
I can see so the smoke effects aren't easy to pull off.
Yeah. What do you use, like cotton for like smoke?
Yeah, and it doesn't look good in my opinion. I mean, I would like to see like that billowing, you know, smoke that kind of trails off in the distance, kind of thing, and then dissipate. That's hard to pull off.
I got it.
Yeah.
Claymation.
It'd be nice.
Yeah. Yeah, if you need voice acting.
I'm doing. I am going to do a Western horror Skinwalker short.
Okay, I love.
And I actually had talked about that with Josh and Brief.
Yeah,
there will be a brief train scene, very brief train scene in that.
Yeah, that would be really cool.
But it's mostly just going to be about Skinwalkers, and so I don't know. I thought, you know, it's funny we're talking about Once Upon a Time in the West and kind of tapping into the harsh reality of the West, because it's going to involve the Native Americans. So, you know, I might tackle that issue, if maybe a little controversial, but kind of what was going on with them at the time, especially.
Yeah.
I don't think there'd be anything wrong.
And you know, this might be controversial to say, but I think they added the hardest out of any group, you know, and you know, American history. So it's definitely a topic that should be dwelled on and talked about.
Yeah.
But I do think it's kind of interesting to portray that part of our history in a gritty, but also in a sense where there's a footing where you can, because that's what I liked about Once Upon a Time in the West is this is not an America is evil story.
Mm-hmm.
This is about individuals,
Mm-hmm.
individuals and their individual actions and repercussions. It's a very mature story in that sense. Whereas, like, remember the Lone Ranger deals with the Transcontinental Railroad too, and that was America was evil. Let's desecrate the history of America by making fun of it, ripping American flags, or making fun of overtly patriotic people. And I said, nah, that's not getting your point across. It's like you have to talk about the wrongs committed by the individual and how that affected the larger picture, because it wasn't a whole group of people that said, let's just do all these awful things. I mean, that's the reality of the West. It was robber barons and they're goons who probably had their own intentions as well. Like Frank, that's what Morton said. He's like, I'm afraid you're going to replace me one day. You're scheming to replace me. And Frank's sitting behind Morton's desk, and he's like, just like holding a gun, except only much more powerful. And so it's like you had a lot of these unscrupulous people in a lawless society, for lack of a better phrase. And the railroad was basically holding that law at ransom, saying, we're the only thing you guys can rely on. So who are you going to believe, us or the red man? And it just wasn't even an option for a lot of people.
Oh, no, for sure.
I wanted to bring up with like the mystery, like there's like the buildup of like Jill's land is actually worth something, and like the station coming to fruition, and that there's so much money tied behind this land and having a station on your property with the clause that the McBains kind of set up and established from the beginning. Like I didn't, like, the first time I watched this, obviously, like I didn't know that was like coming to be, or like like obviously they're setting up the building blocks, but it wasn't like I was like ahead of the movie at any point in time. Like I was like always learning when the movie wanted me to learn like this information, and like you kind of pick up the pieces as you go along. I was watching this with my brother about a month ago, and he was like, I don't know what's happening, and it was like the first, I don't know, like 20-30 minutes. Like honestly, like it takes a bit to, like, you get like 30 minutes in, and like Jill kind of just arrived at the train station, so like it's not like it's a build up for everything, which a lot of people would probably say that's a detriment for a lot of movies, but definitely not this one. Like it takes its time for a reason.
Oh yeah. And
that's your cinema.
Yeah.
Yeah, because all the
that's.
Oh, I'm sorry. You can go ahead, Francisco.
Oh no, hey, you've been here more than I have. You have the right of way to speak, man.
I was just gonna say
I'm the rookie.
I was just gonna add all the mystery, and not even just the mystery, all the tension that keeps building up as to what's gonna happen, to this character's part of the story. It always just has you just sitting on pins and needles, because for a few minutes of the film, I was like, okay, this harmonica guy, I can tell he's not a lawman from how he acts about things, because he's very vigilante when it comes to, like, when he was talking to Wobbles, how he talked to Jill, and just everything about how he carried himself. I was like, this guy seems like he's just out for a overdue revenge killing, and he's gonna make sure he gets it, but how he wants it. And even with, like how Josh said, the mystery of Jill's land actually being worth something, for a little bit I thought like, oh, I'm expecting, obviously this is the Wild West, so I'm expecting, diamonds, jewelry, any kind of precious metals and things. But it turns out it's the most basic thing that was the most essential, which was just water. And then even for Frank and Morton, I was like, well, maybe they're gonna kind of get away with it at the end, and then the sheriff and his posse are gonna show up, which I guess technically did happen with Cheyenne and Harmonica teaming up to kind of do both of them in. But it's at no point can you ever say like, okay, I know how this scene's gonna go. XYZ is gonna happen, and the exposition is gonna turn into ABC.
Right.
It just always flips up what you're expecting, but not even just there. It's even shifting how the characters themselves react to the story. Because I don't know if you guys kind of noticed it, but at certain moments, obviously I know a lot of it's the script, but some of the body acting was like, okay, maybe this isn't so much in the script, because I feel like things are like really gonna come to blows just from the lines that they're saying to each other.
Yeah, that's really well put. Yeah, even like the acting's really great. Obviously, like Charles Bronson like really sells the character as Harmonica, and like everyone does a fantastic job. Even with like the obvious like dubbing parts, that's like every Sergio Leone movie. So I'm like, okay, that's just part of the whole program.
Part of
like
the flair.
Yeah, exactly. This is just part of the motif. And like, you would get actors from other countries, like, just speak your native dialect and we'll just dub it later. Like he just didn't care, in that sense. But like you could always tell like the actor was really emoting and was like a good actor. It wasn't like they were like hammy or hokey or anything. They just like, yeah, you're a good actor. We'll use you and we'll just dub it later. It's okay.
That's funny. I never understood that with spaghetti westerns, because I didn't know that. Like, I knew that these were filmed in like Italy, and I knew that some of the actors were dubbed, but I never understood because like, Clint Eastwood was never dubbed, or any of the big name American actors were never dubbed.
The language.
I didn't know it was like half and half. Like half the actors spoke English and half didn't, because like you could see like certain characters are very clearly dubbed. I didn't know it was just because they literally just hired people in that native country that they were filming in.
Right, yeah. They just like grab.
Well, actually, everyone was dubbed, including the actors were dubbing their own lines because the cameras they used did not record sound.
That's true. So, like, was it dubbed like? Did they dub themselves like throughout the whole movie, or was it just like select scenes? Because I know, like in the beginning,
yeah, I could kind of tell.
Well, studio scenes, yeah, like at Cinecittà Studios in Italy, they probably would have had recording, but on location on site, yeah, they would have dubbed that all in post.
Right. Yeah, but you can't even tell with like the English speaking actors, really. I guess with the main characters, you can't really tell that they're dubbed, which is a good, that's a good positive. I didn't know that.
Yeah, I didn't know that either. That's interesting to learn.
Because I know there was a lot of stuff, obviously, being outside in the elements, and like I think the beginning, like that windmill creaking is an actual sound that windmill was making, and Sergio Leone like put that in like almost like the soundtrack of it, even though it's not like music, but it's just like that those ambient sounds like really build up the tension throughout the beginning of the
right with the mosquito or bug.
Yeah,
that's cool.
Yeah, just flying.
What he put like some sweetener.
And I hate that sound, but it's so effective.
Yeah, he put marmalade. I think the actor put marmalade or something like that on his face, so the fly would just like his face.
That's funny.
Marmalade. Yeah, and and he's like getting pissed off with the what's that piece of technology? Now I'm blanking on it. Morse code with the Morse code.
Telegraph.
Yeah. The telegraph is like coming in, and it's he's just getting irritated. He rips it, and then like the creaking of the windmill stops too. Like everything stops, and then like it like kind of slowly picks up again, And, obviously that wouldn't happen in real life. Like if I broke something, like things would still be making noise outside of that. But like, I love how it just kind of like cuts like the ambient sound and like the track in a way.
Yeah.
There's so many like little details like I could just like jump into like in this movie. So.
Yeah, all those small details are really what give the movie its completionist feel for me.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Because everything is just like, for me, all the ambient noise and sound effects, some of the sound effects to me could be better, but that's just a very small gripe. It's not, movie breaking or, a big turnoff, but everything fell into place when and how it needed to.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I wanted to ask Tony, what, like with the whole mystery and everything unraveling with the, the station and everything, like, were you kind of lost at a point, or like since this was your first time watching the movie, like?
Oh yeah, I was pretty lost until I think they were talking about how the contract of you build here, then you won't lose the land if you build the station here. It's by the time the tracks get here, it started to make sense. So
yeah,
there were certain points where I was
lost. Were kind of put together at that point.
Yeah, kind of as Jerry was saying before. I thought it was interesting because certain scenes you won't. I felt like I didn't really know where they were going until they got there. Like, I think it was harmonica checks into a saloon and then goes upstairs, and all of a sudden there's a shootout out the window. That's definitely one of the moments where it was like, I did not think we were gonna get here from that.
Yeah, that's a great sequence. All the shootouts are great, and I wanted to get back to that scene you were mentioning where, like, harmonica's explaining the whole land deal with the station. Like, I love like when he's telling that to Cheyenne. He's actively like building, he's like, like trying to progress the progress of like making the station. And he's just like, it's not like he's just standing there and he's just telling Cheyenne, like he's actively trying to make this happen, like this come into fruition. Like, and it's just not just like two actors just standing, next to each other in like a boring manner. Like, it's like a lot is going on in every frame, and there's so many extras and like animals that they had to wrangle up. Like, I can't imagine like that kind of production. And like the one thing I wanted to mention, the one nitpick, the only problem I have is when they like Jill gets off the train off the station. It's like that one big shot where they're following her and like all these extras are moving about and everything. There's this little girl, like this grandma character, and it's like a background like extra, and like the little girl obviously like wants her time on screen, so like she like goes up to, like, they're supposed to just walk past Jill, and like they go, like the little girl like goes right up to her and like looks like right up to her and looks directly in the camera, and then like they go, and it's like, there's so many moving parts to that shot, like,
it probably fell under the radar.
Small little thing, like, I'm not gonna redo that. But like, it's something you wouldn't really notice unless you're like looking for it. Like, I was like, that little girl is like being kind of sketchy. I kind of want to see what she does, so like, focusing on her. I don't know if you guys if you noticed that.
I didn't notice that.
Yeah.
It was another scene. I noticed something where one of the people were moving the barrels. I guess it was empty or whatever, but they moved it, like they picked it up and were moving. But I noticed like they're kind of twisting their body, like, okay, they want to make sure people know, like, okay, they got twisting the barrel. That's me. That the person right now is me. They're just leaving their little timestamps in.
Right.
Oh yeah. So when they watch it later, they can be like, "See that guy twisting."
I can't blame them if I was like a background extra in this.
I've done it.
Only movie. I like, go like, yeah, right. I understand it.
That's funny.
It's all part of the fun of being an extra. You can do stuff, and they're not really gonna yell at you for it.
I think Leone encouraged it though, because I've seen a lot of other his movies too, where there's similar things where it's like he probably just said, everybody look as busy as possible,
Right.
Look like you're acting silly, pick your nose, something, like something you would see in an everyday vignette. Because I think that it was Once Upon a Time in America, another train station scene where it's just like I was like, the whole focus is Robert De Niro staring at a woman getting on a train to leave, and you just have all this and that moving. You have engineers cleaning the engine. You have conductors standing looking like they're swearing at each other and stuff. And I'm like, man, I feel like I'm not even paying attention to what's actually happening versus all this chaos. But I guess that's his European side speaking, because that sounds like a train station in Europe.
Yeah.
From the stories I've heard, just so much going on and people. So I was just like that's what I because even when I think of the Old West, I was like that almost seemed like it was Grand Central Terminal level kind of traffic going on there.
Yeah,
being a podunk
town, a little town that's not even like completely like established or like
it's not even on the map.
Yeah.
The railroad was gonna make it on the map. It was gonna.
The railroads are bread and butter.
What was Sergio Leone's first movie? Is it Fistful of Dollars or is it like out of the
Actually, it was a B movie called The Colossus of Rhodes.
Oh, okay.
A cheesy little film, sword and sandal film.
Okay. And then like
I want to say there was stop motion in that.
Oh, really? Huh. I'll have to check that out.
I want to say. I might be wrong. I might be thinking of Talos from Jason and the Argonauts.
Yeah.
But I think it
sounds like it, though. It does sound like it would be like a stop motion film.
The Colossus comes to life. Yeah, the famous Colossus of Rhodes.
That's cool.
Okay. But it's a super cheesy movie. But that was he allegedly directed the chariot race sequence in Ben-Hur. He claims that was.
Yeah, I know he was like at least on set, like he had something to do with it, but like, yeah, I did hear him claim that. I don't know how accurate that is. If it's just like stroking his own ego, like, yeah, I did that, when he was just like kind of there. But
in the words of Colonel. In the words of Colonel Kurtz from Apocalypse Now, he was just an errand boy from grocers to collect the bill back in those days. So
right. So out of the Dollars trilogy, what's the first one out of the
Fistful?
Which one is it?
A Fistful of Dollars.
Fistful of Dollars. Okay, so I think I was watching the commentary and they were saying that the set to make that whole town for that like what it's literally the only like I mean they use it throughout the movie, but like they make the whole town just for that one big establishing shot when Jill like really first enters Arizona or so like that the budget for A Fistful of Dollars was I guess it was the same amount as it cost to make that town.
Oh my god!
Was like their whole budget just for that movie, for just like this set piece, and like you can really honestly tell like they put a lot of work and a lot of detail, and like the trains are coming in, and it feels like so lived in. It doesn't feel like a fake Hollywood set or anything, like really feels like lived in and like the grit, and that's like what I really appreciate about this movie. Or any of Sergio Leone's films.
I agree. Like just the composition of everything is just like it stands up. Sometimes you watch older movies and you're like, okay,
right.
I'm like, okay, I see where like the wires are.
Right.
With this one, everything just feels like you're watching an excerpt. Oh God, couldn't get that word. An excerpt.
You sound like Matt.
It just feels like you're watching that excerpt of history be plucked, right from when it's happening and being presented to you in the format that doesn't It doesn't shy from anything. It tells you the truth. And it's like we've been saying. Jill was a prostitute. Her husband, like they said, he was a man that was he was a brilliant man, but he was also at his core a simple man because he would marry a prostitute.
Mm-hmm.
We've got Harmonica, who's I'm only here to kill one man, and if you get in my way, you're just a body to make my way up the hill. You got the robber baron, who's like dispose of everyone non-lethally, so I can get this land with this water, so I can make me millions and billions of dollars. You've got Cheyenne, who's being framed by the assassin Frank. There's just it's like I said, everybody's playing their own game to win. And when you play like that, you're playing for keeps, as we saw when Harmonica said, once you've killed 3 people, 2 more is just as easy. Because after you kill the first man, that's the hard part, and it's done. Everything past that now is just the follow through to make sure that they're dead.
Yeah.
Jill, you remind me of my mother. She was the biggest whore in all enemy.
I was gonna say the things that Frank says, and just like the pure comical evil of Frank in this movie is like insane.
I just had to say that had to be stated. That's one of the best lines in the movie. It's so funny.
When he said that, I think I rewatched it 3 good times. I was just laughing so hard. He's like, I know you're a whore, but at least you're a good whore that honestly cares about people.
He obviously he means it too, and he's getting that motherly connection with him, and and Jill, she used to make him coffee when I guess he was a boy, and making him the coffee, and so it's very it feels like a motherly relationship. At that point, Jill figures out what Cheyenne's really about. He actually didn't kill the family, and there's that moment where he's making the fire, and she pulls out the drawer and she's staring at the knife, and he's a fired up Cheyenne isn't a pretty thing to see, especially for a lady. And then that's when she pushes the drawer in. I love that. I just that dynamic. It's just, and it's such a small thing. People wouldn't think that, to put that in a movie, and he just he had such a way of having those small details really accentuate the characters and what they're going through. And such a it didn't waste any time in that way, you would be along for the ride.
Oh, without a doubt. All the details and how they fall in line, it's like watching an epic poem in real time, because everything is just fluidly moving to the next piece that's just as important as the last.
Yeah. Well, yeah. It should, do you guys have anything you want to bring up?
I think the auction scene was extremely interesting to watch. I thought it was really funny where every time they try to bid, just the way they're hushed is so. The part where he raises his hand and the guy grabs his hand to light his cigarette.
Yeah, exactly.
The comment by the auctioneer of, I'm really I forget how he worded it, but he was like, I really think you should have set a biddable price on this.
Yeah. I know we've been doing a lot of talking. Francisco, is there anything you wanted to kind of add in? Little things you like, little small nitpicks, flares you thought were oh, this was fantastically amazing how they did that. One thing.
Well, what you said, though, about it running like a fluid poem, I think, not only that, but to the right beats and going full circle, how we started off talking about the soundtrack, I think is really what makes this film work the most. I think it's a true good director usually knows how to get the right composer to work for them, and Sergio Leone comes from a rare breed of directors that knows how to get the right guy. Like Spielberg had John Williams, Hitchcock had Bernard Herrmann. It's like Leone had Morricone, and it's no matter what, even his lesser films still have that same fluid, like The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, is a great example too, where even though you kind of have motifs and that are sometimes even funny, like not comical musical tones that are played up kind of to add a comedic scene, it's all still part of the bigger picture. And it's all giving you a feel. And that speaks true, I think, to their Italian heritage. Because I think they take a lot of their cues from opera and how opera works in sort of setting up a story.
Okay.
Of course, it's sung.
I never even thought of that. Yeah, that's a good point.
That's a unique perspective.
You open these mind. Films reek of Italian culture, history. I mean, I think the film Once Upon a Time in the West speaks a lot to the sort of anti-establishment feelings that we're developing. Well, Leone grew up during Mussolini. And, with Mussolini and his false promises of creating Roma, Italia, Gloria, all that stuff. And, all for this, all while people were being disenfranchised, killed, the dealings with Hitler and all that. And that kind of, I think, speaks volumes. It's like Morton kind of is playing a little bit like the patsy to Mussolini, kind of guy, and I think he was even crafted to look like an official, actually, from Mussolini's government. The way he had the mutton chops and everything. Vittorio Emanuele, the king of Italy, that's who he was supposed to look like. Vittorio Emanuele III. And so that was supposed to be an allusion to that story, even though two different periods in history, but there's a connection between sort of the sucker, to the dictator kind of, mentality, even though that's not Morton's character, but just the demeanor and the attitude. So there's a lot of that goes on throughout the films. I mean, maybe with the Dollars trilogy, it's more subtle. It's things that you would have to be a hardcore Italian historian to catch, but later on in this film, they become a lot stronger and more topical of even more current issues that were occurring in Italy at that time. But they were actually going through some pretty turbulent social issues as they were trying to find their footing, because the United States was involved in helping rebuilding the country after the war, but we just didn't stick around long enough as we did like in, say, Japan or Germany. So they kind of fell into political turmoil for a long time, up until about the 80s, terrorist shootings in the streets, stuff that basically made people think, oh my God, we can end up with a Hitler if we're not careful. And so Leone very much was in tune to all that and capturing that sort of feeling that people had. Because I think there were a lot of neo-fascists at that time trying to say, oh, it was better when Mussolini was in charge. And he makes this movie to kind of give them a subtle clue of, no, we don't want to go back to that. Even though it's not clearly anti-fascist. It's more just a story without any political subtext. Just
and whatever political subtext you get out of it, it's like just because of the story telling. It's like kind of your own interpretation, I would say. I mean, I guess everything can be political in a way, but like I think with his movies, it's just kind of he's just telling a story, and then whatever you take out of it is what you get out of it kind of situation.
Well, it's like we Americans, we wouldn't have had any inkling, so we don't catch any of that stuff. And I only was aware of that because of the historian Christopher Frayling, who talks about Leone's work. He was the one that after he brought it up, I couldn't unsee everything. So I was like, okay, I get it now.
That's cool.
But I wouldn't have got any of it.
Yeah.
So
that's interesting.
Yeah,
I do have some last things I want to add in, but it would fit better in with my final thoughts and review.
Yeah, I guess
it's more in closing of the movie as a whole.
I guess we'll get into our final thoughts and ratings, but I just wanted to show off. This is kind of like some of the artwork and the posters, if you could even see like the different posters that they had lined up, I guess, throughout when the movie was released. So like this is just like artwork that's that looks pretty cool.
That's nice.
Yeah.
I like that one in the second from that one, yeah.
The harmonica one?
Yeah, the harmonica one. I don't know, it just stands out.
These like different posters from different countries, and it's really cool. I would, it would be great to have like a poster of like this movie I have a Clint Eastwood from Josie Wales. I guess that's as close as I'm gonna get. But
That's a good point.
I just wanted to showcase this because this is all pictures and everything in the vinyl. This is like an image from the movie. And that's when Jill is like, "Oh my gosh, I love you, Harmonica, because you saved me."
Harmonica, please give me your children.
Yeah, him. So yeah, I just wanted to show that. So we'll get into final thoughts and ratings. So Tony, since you were last to be here, you go first.
Great. Okay. Final thoughts. I think everyone's kind of touched on it, but like just the characters themselves not being perfect. Like, I mean, not being perfect, but they're all dirty and gritty. Like Cheyenne, as we talked about before, like the comments that he made to Jill, pretty insane. When I saw that, I was like, I don't know what to think of this character as a whole. And just like the way he came back in and he's like, "Oh, make me coffee." And she's like, "What?" I think, that, and then particularly a lot of the comments that why am I blanking right now? Shoot, I'm blanking on I lost the character's name, but just like the pure evil of Frank. Yeah, just like the things that he said to Jill, like just pure scoundrel.
Yeah,
like, it's just very, I don't know, like dark, gritty movie. Very interesting. I know that this it's interesting to like go and watch all these older Hollywood movies or old Western movies and just like know their impact on film. And like now I feel like I can go back and watch things like Tarantino movies, like Star Wars, and like see that impact and kind of understand where inspiration was drawn from.
Yeah. Yeah, even the movies that inspired this movie, like I want to see, like High Noon. I know that's like one of them. So yeah, no, I totally get that point.
Yeah, and I think, I don't know, I feel like I was kind of drawing allusions to movies of the period, but maybe I was off. I don't know why. There was certain like parts of the shootouts that reminded me of other movies that I was like, this is interesting. I don't know. I'm drawing for or grasping at straws, but I don't know why. I don't know. I think it's very interesting to go back and watch these types of movies.
What movie did it remind you of?
I don't know why. I think I'm just I think this is out of nowhere. Like, I don't think this is actually like a thing. That one shootout that I talked about before, where he's poking the gun through.
Oh yeah.
I don't know why I couldn't not think of James Bond movies. Like, particularly, I think there's a scene in From Russia with Love where there's like someone with like a sniper rifle aimed out of like a billboard sign.
Okay.
I don't know why I could not think of that. I know it's just kind of a set piece and it's probably not like, but I don't know why. I know I looked it up after, and that movie came out first, so I don't think that there's any. I think this might just be my own.
I haven't really seen those.
No, there probably is.
There probably is, because cinematography is always connected by. I watched one movie as a kid, and it changed my life.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was going to ask Francisco. Do you know anything? If there's any tie-in?
No, I mean, I think Sergio Leone was inspired by the tongue-in-cheek humor of the Connery Bond films, and I think it's no coincidence too, with Fistful of Dollars having come out the same year as Goldfinger, that there was definitely sort of a development of like, because what most Westerns can be, you can have a funny character, but to make comedy out of violence was not a thing. And so, maybe a guy falls off a horse, ha ha ha, but not anything like with a gun through it. And so, yes, how very Sean Connery of him, because I guess, yes, that would be something Leone probably would have been like, hey, that would be funny to do something kind of like that. And I do think I heard they mentioned From Russia with Love when they were talking about that scene as of like the unexpected spot of something. Yeah, so you were on the money, actually.
Yeah, there you go, Tony.
There you go, Tony. Snap for Tony.
Well, I guess that's kind of hilarious that's that I did happen to notice that, but I think just from that alone, like just like I love watching movies that are inspired by these movies. So I'm very happy that I have this to draw from when I'm watching other movies. So I think are we doing ratings too?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Final thoughts ratings. Yeah.
I think I'd give this movie a 9. I think it's like very well composed, very beautiful movie.
How dare you, Tony? No, I'm joking.
Not telling you right now.
That's okay.
No, I like a lot of what Tony said.
Yeah. No, that's fair. We'll just go backwards. We'll go with Francisco now.
Well, it's funny because actually, when I'm thinking about this film, and I've recommended it to people, and I've gotten starkly different reactions. My personal rating would probably be 10 out of 10. But if I were to say to a Western fan, I'd say they'd be likely to give it a 5 out of 10. Fans of high cinema have had a hard time accepting this film. I had a teacher who actually told me, he said, I hate Sergio Leone films. I don't know how anyone could say those films are art. And I said, well, I think they kind of, you could put them up in the echelons of all the other great directors. He's like, who, like Stanley Kubrick? Yeah, right. And I'm like, the shot composition style, the way he frames everything.
Mm-hmm.
It's cinematic theatrics on a high scale. It's like, but I do think it's a movie that's hard to recommend for people sometimes, but it's finding its audience. And I think a lot of folks who just want something interesting, I think will get a kick out of this film if they can. And I do believe there are people who could sit through the beginning because it just gets you that much. And it's like, I'll be honest, the first time I saw it, I really liked trains when I was a kid. So I was just kind of like sitting there going like, when the doo-doo train coming? That's the only reason I sat through that. Yeah, a little kid watching that movie, then that sounded like a good idea.
How old were you?
Didn't know I was watching
when you first watched it.
I was about 8.
Okay.
Oh, that's not bad.
8 years old.
Oh, you're fine.
So but I was sitting there waiting for the train just like them. Other people could probably tap out and probably be like, what the heck am I watching? But I suppose it really is just about, if you just want an interesting story, and I think probably the best way to really talk about this film, to someone that's just like, I've never seen a Sergio Leone film before, I would just say, go in with an open mind and just let the story do its work. Because there is a story. It's just going to eventually fold together. And I think that was good. You guys say mysterious or suspense because it very much is. There's a lot of surprises. There's a lot of things that come to light that then kind of leave you feeling like, wow, that's what this was all about. Rather than good guy, bad guy, guy wants to save the girl, guy wins the girl in the end. And that doesn't happen in this movie either.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Everybody goes on their own merry way.
Profession. In the end, when all those guys are around her and I'm thinking about her profession, I'm like, that's going to be one rich little town right there.
Yeah. I feel like she's like trying to get away from that life. That's why she moved over there.
Yeah.
With the McBain family.
Well, we could hope.
Yeah. I guess you could see. She's almost like hits both calibers, like obviously she's like, a prostitute, but also at the same time, she's like very motherly character and she doesn't take shit from people, like she basically tells Cheyenne, like, you and your men could have your way with me, but at the end, like, I'm not going to die from this and I'm going to be the same exact person I was. And like, it's just going to be a filthy memory in your mind. So like, she does stand up for her own. And like, it seemed like she was like, she was talking about like how she wanted to raise kids and like, was provide for the McBain family. So, she kind of hit both calibers, which was kind of nice,
You know what though? This really was one of the first major westerns where you had a very three-dimensional female character.
Yeah.
You know, this wasn't just someone that needed to be saved, someone that was kidnapped or taken away, you know, by the bank robbers or anything. This was a fully three-dimensional person that had her skeletons in her closet, was at terms with them, as you said.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that I think is what makes it very, and that's probably the biggest draw about this film is, you know, you're not going to get a fully good person, but you're not going to get a fully horrible person either, because everyone's got something, a motive or redeeming factor that kind of makes, like, I that scene, you know, with Frank and her, there's a part where it's like, oh, he just needs some love. You know, and that'll hopefully calm down his fire. You know, he's just a lonely. He's too cooped up in that train with Morton. He just needs a little loving, and maybe
at the same time,
down.
it's like almost kind of sweet. He's like, "Yeah, I'll marry you," and then like you're like, "Oh, this is the man who killed her husband, and she's just doing this so she can live. Like, if she doesn't sleep with him, he's gonna." You know, that's what's going on, and like at the same time, people could say, "Oh, they went a little too far." That scene, you know, but at the same time, I think, you know, implications of like the men that you had to deal with in that part of history, and like this character Frank is like, you know, almost unredeemable. That, you know, I'm kind of glad it's in the movie because it shows just how like gritty and grotesque these men would be, and like this is how they would act. You know, it's not, they don't like beat around the bush kind of thing.
Well, I guess I could wrap up my thought with that too, where it's like, you know, if you just want to see something where it's a realistic portrayal too of the West without, you know, getting too much into the semantics of, you know, what actually happened, but just something that gives you like a window as far as the visuals and stuff like that, you know, because that's the one thing I, you know, really liked about Flagstone was, you know, all the old Western towns are so clean. But that's because they did use the same set in Hollywood. They would just clean it up and repaint it, make it look nice. But that's what I'd imagine they would have looked like, clapboarded up and just put together hastily. And then maybe like in 20 years, you'd have a brick building or something show up. Church would probably be the first building.
They did show
nice in town.
They did show some brick buildings like in the town. Like it felt like it was just like developing with the brick and everything. I think there's like one building when you're passing through made out of brick, but yeah, it's like early on, obviously, like the town's just like starting to become its own.
Well, I guess I'll go ahead and give mine then. What was your rating going to be for the movie, Francisco?
I think because of my perspective of hard recommending, I'd probably give it an 8 out of 10.
Oh, really? I
love it personally.
I thought you said a 10 out of 10.
Personally, but if I were to give a more general rating for a public, I would say probably 8 out of 10.
Okay. That's fair. It for me, this is, I haven't watched a Western movie since Magnificent Seven with Denzel Washington. And I also caught, I think maybe about the first 45, maybe 50 minutes of the one with Clint Eastwood. So this did take me right back to, you know, another version of the true grit of the West. It's not the big, you know, cowboys and Indians that, you know, they portrayed. This is what it really is. You have successful men using underhanded tactics to continue to be more successful on people trying to improve their lives by starting from nothing to get to something. And I also like how it wasn't, you know, stereotypically, you know, during that gold rush period. It was, you know, right as the Transcontinental was about to be finished. Well, not the Transcontinental, but, you know, another stop on the Transcontinental. And you just see a fight dispute for land. You see, you know, a murder for hire. You see a revenge story. And you see somebody trying to essentially scheme his way into robbing somebody out of something that they knew well beforehand was going to be a very major profit. And all the stories and how they interconnect with, you know, the ebb and flow of ups and downs. Like, you know, here's a really good moment, and then, oh, is this gonna kind of get into some, racy and dicey scenes here, I love this a lot. It reminded me of, kind of Gunsmoke Bonanza as far as Western shows because of, obviously how kind of rugged everybody was and how it had to be no nonsense almost all the time, even with some of the lighter hearted moments where people were more casual with each other. I would definitely recommend this movie to somebody, not even as a historical piece, but just as a piece of cinematography. I'm going to give this one a 10 out of 10. I liked a lot of the shots for this. Definitely the camera work is what kept me drawn in from start to finish. Like the zoom ins on the natural landscapes, just having people in solo frames by themselves, just having, their scripted dialogue or monologue, the sound effects with how everything went from gunfights to punches, whips, so on and so forth. And also just how I don't know if everybody else picked up on it, but every character we're introduced to from Jill all the way to Morton, they just keep feeding and playing off each other. And they know it's a cat and mouse game once you get into the real, muck and grit of what's happening for this setting. And even though everyone's playing off each other, they're still making their story about them featuring persons that are here. And that was something that I also enjoyed quite a bit.
Yeah. I couldn't put it better myself, guys. I feel like you all kind of summed it up for me. There was something I did want to bring up, but I completely blanking on it right now. Obviously, I give this movie a 10 out of 10. I think it's fantastic. The cinematography is beautiful. The score is immense, and like I listen to it just my day-to-day life. Sometimes I just play it. There's a lot of times where I just like play it like it doesn't really matter the scenario or situation. Like I could just listen to it like all day long. It's
funny story, Josh.
Yeah.
I did a history project back in college about the Transcontinental Railroad, and I did the photos with little narration bits, and I put that in the soundtrack, and everybody was just like sitting there watching my PowerPoint like captivated.
The music, the music can sell anything.
Images of the railroad being built, with the history, and my teacher actually said that was the most beautiful presentation I've ever seen.
That's great. That's so good. It's the music. The music can sell anything. Like it could be just like literally a picture of a garbage can, and then you could have the music, and then like people would be crying, like, "Oh my gosh, it's so emotional." Like that's the power of the soundtrack and this score. It's like really immense. I love it. I give it a 10 out of 10. I don't know. There's not really much else I can say. I think.
We've covered almost every facet of this movie.
Yeah, there's there's something I wanted to bring up. There's always something in this movie because I feel like you can watch this so many times and like always pick up some nuance or like some character reaction or something that you didn't notice from the first time. Oh, that's what it was. Frank, his silhouette when it's when you first kind of see it, like of Harmonica's past, and like you see his silhouette and you're like, what is that? And then you get a little bit more information as the movie goes on, and you feel like a little bit more of Frank's outline. I loved how they build that up, and it was so cool. And then you really get that payoff at the end, and then Harmonica, that's the reason why Harmonica plays harmonica is because Frank just like put it, in his mouth while his brother was dying, being hung. And that was like his revenge was to basically give it back to him and in his dying and look at him in his dying eyes like here's the harmonica, take it, I'm done with you. And You know, now what? How is he going to introduce himself in every scene now? He doesn't have his harmonica anymore. You know, what is he going to do?
I guess he could just hum the tune.
He'll play his banjo. You know, something a little bit more like a happy-go-lucky instrument, I guess. You know.
Well, no, his descendant became Paul Kersey, so now he just introduces himself with quips. Hey, Pally, not
right? Yeah, exactly.
I forgot. I can't think of
He
a
like tells him knock jokes or something. Yeah. Well, I do have a harmonica. I can't play it. I don't know how to play the actual song, and this is like not the right key. So that's all I got. Just had to bring that. That's why I got up while Tony was talking. It was important that I get the harmonica. So okay, I guess that was the episode. So Jerry, it's your choices for spooky season for the next episode. Do you wanna take it away now?
So I'm gonna, if we can also get Mateo back, we're still trying to figure out something to get him. But in the meantime, my picks I'm gonna have for Josh is Green Lantern, Beware My Power, the movie on HBO Max.
Wait, is that the
short?
Wait. The Ryan Reynolds movie?
I got scared.
No, it's not the Ryan Reynolds.
Oh, okay. All right, good.
And then we're gonna watch Blackest Night, episodes 4 and 5 of Justice League.
Oh, okay, cool. I'm all right. I'm into that. That'll be cool. All right.
Yeah, I was looking for a reason to finally watch this movie. I've been trying to make time forever, but I'm like, okay, if I do it for a pick, I can finally sit here and watch it to completion.
Yeah, no, I
can start and stop.
There's a few movies I haven't seen. I'm like saving it to like, you know, for a choice on this show, you know, to watch it in fresh eyes. So I get it. So what is it called? If you don't want to be spoiled for Blackest Night and
Blackest Night and Green Lantern, Beware My Power. I might have the movie title wrong, but I think that's it.
All right. Well, if you don't want to be spoiled for Green Lantern, you know, both those titles, make sure to watch those before next episode. All right, we're gonna close this out. So 3, 2, 1. This is Josh from BatYard Productions sending you off up and away until next BatYard's finest episode.
This is Jerry guiding everyone with Green Lantern's light.
Francisco Gonzalez of Blue Sentai Productions.
This is Tony from Star City.
And we're becoming super friends, one episode at a time.
Yeah, we did it. That actually went more smooth than I thought it was going to go.
I was really worried.
I was like,